for those people who have been following the SEC versus crypto stance, what you'll notice is that the SEC have been a little bit, they've gone up against crypto. They've been a little bit unfavorable towards crypto.
Putting it mildly.
We in crypto say that they've declared war on crypto. Gary Gensler and the SEC have gone against the two biggest exchanges, one in the US and one in the world, Binance and Coinbase, for different charges. Four charges against Coinbase, 13 charges against Binance, very different in nature. They've also declared a lot of crypto assets securities, which may or may not be securities. We don't think they're securities, but they've just declared them securities in those charges. So net, when you take the SEC's hostile approach against crypto, and then all of a sudden you get BlackRock applying for a spot ETF, it's like two extreme things. It's like two absolute extremes. On the one hand, you've got the end of the world, the SEC attacking Coinbase. And on the other hand, you've got BlackRock applying for a spot ETF. And I think it's worth noting now that BlackRock have a 575 to 1 approval versus rejection or denial rates for the ETFs. And the one ETF that they got denied was an ETF that doesn't report its daily holdings to the SEC, and that was many years ago. They've pretty much got a clean record on normal ETFs. And I believe that BlackRock are a very calculated organization. I'm not sure that BlackRock would enter the ETF fray around Bitcoin if they weren't quite confident that they had a good chance of success here. And so that is why all eyes are on Bitcoin and specifically on Bitcoin, but also on crypto right now. And that's why we've gone from, if you looked at the crypto market on the 5th of June, when the SEC instituted charges against Binance, and then on the 6th or 7th of June against Coinbase, it felt like it was the end of the world for Bitcoin and for crypto, and Bitcoin went to $24,800. And now today, as I look at my screen now, Bitcoin's trading at $31,192. And if you look at the bubbles, which the bubbles are green, the banter bubbles, which we call them, they're green. They're showing that the entire crypto market is actually looking green. So it's what a difference 2 weeks makes.
Step into the captivating world of crypto as renowned expert Neuner decodes the SEC's battle against cryptocurrencies, shining a spotlight on the intriguing clash between BlackRock and the crypto space. In an exclusive talk, Ran unveils the surprising connections between BlackRock, the U.S. government, and the unprecedented emergence of a potential Bitcoin ETF. Discover the calculated strategies, political implications, and decentralized nature of Bitcoin that make this development a game changer.
BlackRock have a 575 to 1 success versus failure rate in ETFs. They know exactly what they're doing. They have the biggest distribution network for ETFs in the world, I think. And they're very, very calculated. And I don't believe they would have entered the fray. They would have just entered if they didn't think that they were going to do it. That's the official answer. The unofficial answer is that anyone that knows anything about politics knows that BlackRock is the US government. BlackRock is a proxy for the US government. It's the biggest asset manager in the US. It is instrumental in the financial decisions in the United States. In fact, I was listening to a talk about the COVID pandemic, the US government response, and one of the people that the government called about the potential stimulus measures was Larry Fink, and got his opinion about how to do it. So you can't deny the connections between BlackRock and the US government. And I'm being diplomatic here. It actually gets a lot worse. But with that said, there could be a couple of things at play here. We believe that there may be a chance that BlackRock have some kind of deal that kind of like, if you apply, we are going to give you the ETF. Why is that so important? Because if you think about the SEC and specifically Gary Gensler's approach to crypto, he's had a lot of backlash, and he's had a lot of backlash from senators, congressmen, and many people in politics. He's getting a lot of backlash because of his draconian position on crypto. And I think that he may be in a position where he's got to be seen to give something back. And what better to give back than to give an ETF on an asset that probably deserves an ETF because of its on the merits of the asset, but an asset that the SEC can't really control because it is a commodity. So honestly, we know for sure that Bitcoin is a commodity. That's how it's been regulated. And so it's kind of out of the jurisdiction of the SEC. And since they can't control it, what better way to give something back than to approve the ETF? And if you're going to approve the ETF, well, who better to approve an ETF for than your friends at BlackRock? And so I guess that to me, it's kind of no surprise. And also, to be honest, I couldn't have picked a better fighter. If you would have come to me 2 years ago and said, look, you're not going to get an ETF approved. All these ETFs are going to be rejected. But eventually, your ETF is going to be approved. Who would you pick to be the best fighter driving your ETF? Answer would be BlackRock. And they are now number one in the line to get it. There are a whole lot of other applications. So on my screen, I've got them. You got BlackRock, WisdomTree, Invesco, Valkyrie, and Bitwise. 2 of those are new filings, which is the Valkyrie and the BlackRock ETF. And the other 3 are resubmissions of previous applications that were withdrawn at the suggestion or advice of the SEC. And they've now been reinstituted. This all happened within a week of BlackRock submitting their spot Bitcoin ETF application.
Okay, so a couple of points to break down there. But let's start off with the idea that this is potentially a gesture of goodwill from Gary Gensler, who's been facing calls for him to resign, for there to be sort of changes in the hierarchy at the SEC, which would effectively have him resign or have a smaller role. So you're thinking that this is his way of trying to win favor and maintain his position potentially?
Look, as we get closer and closer to the elections, I think that you don't want to be out of favor. You don't want to be seen as the person responsible for the knocks that the party may need to take. And he's come in, as an Elizabeth Warren proxy. And we know how extreme Elizabeth Warren is against crypto. I mean, she's running her whole campaign on an anti-crypto army. I think that you don't want to be that guy. And I think that this may be quite a strategic move to say, look, we're giving something back. Here's the ETF. Now, crypto people, you can go celebrate. If you were to ask which is the asset management company in the US that manage the most government money, BlackRock is the answer. If you were to ask who is the most politically connected asset manager in the world today or in the United States today, BlackRock is the answer. Who manages the most government funding? BlackRock is the answer. If you think back to when Tesla bought a whole lot of Bitcoin and said that they were going to accept Bitcoin, the speculation was that BlackRock convinced them, nudged them as a shareholder that it's not a great idea to potentially be doing this. That's, of course, is speculation. The second narrative is you talk about the decentralized nature of Bitcoin. And I think that this is a common misconception, which I think we should clarify here today. Regardless of whether you own Bitcoin or not, and whether one party owns all the Bitcoin, that won't make Bitcoin centralized. Because when they talk about the decentralized nature of Bitcoin, they talk about the mining, the approval of the transactions, which take place on computers that are scattered all around the world. And the reason why that's so important is because these computers or miners that run the network, they effectively control the network. And they distributed all around the world, millions and millions and millions of machines all around the world approving transactions. So when they talk about Bitcoin not becoming centralized, what they don't want is they don't want the miners, the owners of these computers that are approving the transactions, to collude and to be able to change transactions and to wipe out your money in the process, or to change your money in the process, or to change the rules of the game in the process. So I want to just break it down because I think a lot of people don't understand this. A lot of people have heard that there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. And that's written into code. It's a fundamental part of Bitcoin. The only way that can change is if the majority of the miners, over 50% of the miners around the world, all agree that the rules need to change. And then they would split the chain. Those that like the old method stay on the old method and keep their computers running on the old method. And those that like the new method go to the new method. And the biggest chain would be the Bitcoin chain. So why am I telling you this? Because regardless of who owns the Bitcoin, the mining still remains decentralized. So if BlackRock want to buy 90% of all the Bitcoin in circulation, they don't affect the computers that actually affect the transactions. So let's go back to it. You asked me, why do I believe that I wouldn't have a better soldier than BlackRock in the race? Very simple. If I'm going to get someone to buy the Bitcoin or to buy the Bitcoin that I've held for so long and that I'm buying now, I couldn't think of a better buyer than the biggest money that for the government and the biggest distributor of asset management products in the United States, which is BlackRock, through all their terminals and their distribution network of investment products. And so if you want to get people to invest in Bitcoin, you need a distribution network. BlackRock have the biggest distribution network in the United States. You also need a buyer that believes in the product. This is the buyer with the most assets under management. Now, it would be kind of strange if they launched a Bitcoin ETF but didn't invest any of their own funds in this amazing ETF that they've just brought to market. That would be quite a strange phenomenon. So to me, I think it's the ultimate buyer for Bitcoin. If a centralized party wants to buy my Bitcoin and hold them in a bank vault because that's where its customers are, that's great. If you don't want to be that and you want to control your own money, you can still go buy Bitcoin on the open market and hold your own Bitcoin and not have any risks of centralized